The condo must be registered under Chloe's name. We have already discussed this thoroughly, and there is nothing more to say. Margaret's voice rang out dryly in the closing room of a luxury real estate office overlooking Lake Michigan in Chicago. The steady hum of the air conditioning, the rustling of paperwork on the table, and the soft clink of a coffee cup against a ceramic saucer suddenly felt as though they were being suffocated. I sat across from her, my hands still resting on the purchase agreement for the condo. For a brief moment, I thought I had misheard. I looked up at her, then turned to Julian, the man who was supposed to become my husband in just 2 months. He had his head down, hands clasped together, his thumb nervously rubbing the seam of his brand new dress pants. I had picked out the navy blue suit he was wearing today. I had even adjusted his tie before we left the house. Just hours ago, he had hugged me from behind, whispering that after today, we would finally have a real home. Yet now, sitting right in front of me, that same man remained completely silent, acting as if none of this had anything to do with him. I tried to keep my voice as steady as possible. Whose name did you say this condo will be under? Margaret raised an eyebrow, looking annoyed as if I had just asked something utterly ridiculous. I told you, it will be under Chloe's name. She is Julian's biological sister. When she eventually gets married, she needs to have some assets to her name so her future in-laws will respect her. Putting this condo in her name is the most reasonable thing to do. I stared at the contract in front of me. The condo was nearly 2,000 square feet, located on a high floor with an unobstructed view of the lake. The total purchase price was over $1.2 million. The down payment was $500,000, and my mother had already prepared the funds, ready to wire the money the moment the contract was signed. For the remainder, Julian and I had pooled together $15,000 of our hard-earned savings to cover the closing costs, taxes, and basic furnishings. Truth be told, this condo was essentially a wedding gift from my mother to me. And yet, my future mother-in-law was calmly declaring that it had to belong to her daughter. I turned to Julian. What do you think? Julian flinched slightly. He looked up at me, his eyes a bit red, but it was not out of sympathy for me. It was the look of a man who had known about this all along and was simply terrified of my reaction. Elena, he pleaded, his voice sounding like a beg. My mom is just thinking about our family. Chloe is a girl, and she does not have anything to her name yet. If she has a condo under her name when she gets married, she will not be looked down upon. Besides, you and I are getting married soon. What is yours is mine. What belongs to our family or to Chloe, it does not matter because we are all one family. I heard those 2 words very clearly. One family. In our 3 years of dating, I had heard that phrase countless times. When his mother needed private back surgery, and he lacked the funds, he said, Elena, we are going to be one family anyway. Please help my mom out. When Chloe wanted a $1,500 designer bag, but did not have the cash, he said, Elena, can you treat my sister like your own? We are one family now. Last Thanksgiving, when he wanted to pay for an expensive family vacation just to show off to his relatives, he said, Elena, let me borrow $2,000. I just want my mom to be proud. We are one family. Why nickel and dime? I used to believe those words. I believed them so much that I found happiness in giving. I believed that for a marriage to last, it had to start with unconditional generosity. But in this exact moment, with a $1.2 million condo on the table, I finally realized that one family in their vocabulary meant my money could become theirs. But my rights had to completely disappear. I took a deep breath. Let me get this straight. This condo costs over $1.2 million. The down payment requires $500,000. My mother is wiring that $500,000. You and I are contributing $15,000 for fees. But ultimately, the title deed will have Chloe's name on it. Did I understand that correctly? Margaret's face darkened. You are speaking very coldly. What does it matter that your mother is putting up the money? Your mother is well off. It is completely normal for her to help her daughter out a bit. My Julian is settling by marrying you. It is not like he is hitting the jackpot. A talented man like him has no shortage of young, beautiful women wanting to marry him. Do not think just because your family has some money that you can look down on us. I looked at her, suddenly feeling my heart freeze over inch by inch. She was not embarrassed at all. She did not find her demand outrageous in the slightest. In her mind, my mother paying for a house and putting her daughter's name on it was simply a given. And if I objected, I was the narrow-minded, selfish, and unreasonable one. The real estate agent standing next to us stiffened. His name was Lucas. From the moment we walked in, He had maintained a bright, welcoming smile. Now, that smile was frozen on his face, his eyes darting awkwardly between me and Julian. In his career in luxury real estate, he had probably seen many families argue over money, but a blatant daylight robbery like this was likely a first. I placed my pen down on the table. Julian, tell me the truth. You knew about this beforehand, did you not? He bit his lip. Just that single action gave me my answer. Elena, I was planning to slowly explain it to you after we signed. My mom is getting older. She worked her whole life to raise me and Chloe. I did not want to upset her. What about me? He remained silent. I asked again, slower this time. You did not want to upset your mother. Did you ever consider that I would be upset? Julian reached out, trying to grab my hand, but I pulled away. His hand hovered in the air before slowly dropping. Elena, please do not make a scene in front of outsiders. Can we just go home and talk about this? I let out a laugh, a very soft laugh, but even I could hear it trembling. Home? Which home? The condo we haven't even signed for is already destined for your sister. What home do I have left to return to with you? Margaret slammed her hand on the table. Watch your tone. We are not even married yet and you are already disrespecting your mother-in-law. What kind of behavior is this? I will be straightforward. Today, this condo must be in Chloe's name. If you do not agree, the wedding is off. Those words fell like a knife, but strangely, they did not scare me. Instead, a terrifying calmness settled over my heart. Perhaps a person only truly hurts when they still have hope, but in that second, the hope inside me had been crushed by Julian's own hands. I looked at him one last time. Do you feel the same way? If I do not agree to put the condo in Chloe's name, you will not marry me. Sweat beaded on his forehead. He looked at his mother, then at me. The inner conflict was obvious on his face, but that conflict did not move me. A man who has to weigh fairness toward the woman he loves, against the greed of his family, has already given his answer. Elena, his voice choked up. Please, just compromise for me this one time. My mom has not had it easy. Chloe is my sister. I promise. When I make enough money later, I will buy you another condo. Let us just consider this helping Chloe out first. Later? I asked. Your salary is $8,000 a month. After deducting your car payment, the money you send to your mom, Chloe's allowance, and our living expenses, how much do you have left? A $1.2 million condo. Exactly what year do you plan on buying me another one? Or do you expect my mother to keep pulling out her checkbook so you can play the dutiful son? Julian's face turned pale. He had no answer. Margaret immediately chimed in. Do not look down on my son. Julian is a project management director at Apex Holdings. He has a brilliant future. You should consider yourself blessed that he is willing to marry you. You are 28 years old. It is not like you are young anymore. Do not act like you are still a prize. I heard every single word. 28 years old, no longer young, a blessing to be married by her son. So, in their eyes, my 3 years of love, my sacrifices, my kindness, ultimately amounted to nothing more than a statement like that. Julian suddenly stood up. I thought he was going to tell his mother that she had crossed the line. I thought, for once, he would stand by my side. But instead, he walked around the table, stopped right in front of me, and suddenly dropped to his knees. His knees hit the marble floor with a dull thud. The entire room went dead silent. Lucas, the real estate agent, took a shocked step back. Margaret gave a fake gasp. Julian, what are you doing? What kind of man kneels before a woman like that? But she made no effort to pull him up. Julian looked up at me, his eyes bloodshot. Elena, I am begging you. Just this once. Do it for me. For the 3 years we have been together, please, give in to my mom this one time. I know you are a good person. Please do not let everything fall apart. I looked down at the man kneeling before me, the man who once carried me across a flooded street after a heavy storm. The man who once stood outside my office building until midnight just to bring me hot soup. The man who promised he would never let me suffer any injustice in his family. Now, he was kneeling here, not to apologize, but to force me to hand over the house my mother was buying to his sister. I felt a sharp pain in my chest, but no tears fell. I just asked very softly, Julian, are your knees really so cheap that you would use them to force the woman you love to sacrifice her entire life? He froze, his lips trembling. I slowly picked up the phone from the table and opened my contacts. My mother's number was right at the top. I pressed call. It only rang twice before she answered. Elena, Sweetie, are you done signing? I am waiting to authorize the wire transfer. I looked at Julian, at Margaret, and at the unsigned contract on the table. My voice was so calm that I felt like a stranger to myself. Mom, do not wire the $500,000. The other end of the line was silent for a few seconds. Are you buying a different unit, honey? No, I replied. I am not buying a house anymore, and I am not going through with this wedding either. On the other end, my mother stayed quiet for a long time. I knew she was not someone who panicked easily. Growing up, I rarely saw my mother lose her composure over anything. But her silence right now made my throat tighten. It was not suspicion. It was as if she had already guessed how deeply I had just been hurt. Elena, where are you? I am at the closing office. Is Julian there? I looked at the man, still kneeling in front of me. He was gripping his knees, his face ghostly white, his lips moving as if he wanted to speak but lacked the courage. Yes, his mother is here too. My mother's voice deepened. Put me on speaker. I turned on the speakerphone. The room instantly became so quiet that Julian's heavy breathing was crystal clear. Margaret looked a bit startled now, but she quickly raised her chin, trying to maintain her sense of superiority. My mother spoke, enunciating every word slowly. I am Elena's mother. I want to clarify something. Is it true that your family is demanding the condo, which I am providing the down payment for, be put in the name of your youngest daughter? Margaret froze for a few seconds before giving a scoffing laugh. You are making it sound so harsh. We are about to be in-laws. What is wrong with helping each other out a bit? Your family is wealthy, so loving your son-in-law means loving his sister too. That is just being reasonable. I saw Julian's hands start to shake. Perhaps at this moment, he finally realized how deep of a grave his mother was digging. He frantically turned to her. Mom, stop talking. Margaret glared at him. You shut up. Let the adults handle this. My mother did not get angry. She just gave a very light laugh. A laugh so cold it felt like the temperature in the room dropped several degrees. I understand now. From this second forward, the $500,000 will not be wired. The wedding between my daughter and Julian is cancelled. As for the money Elena has spent on your family over the years, I will have someone audit the accounts. If they were emotional gifts, we will not ask for them back. But if any of those funds were taken under the guise of loans, authorized transfers, or used under false pretenses, I will handle it through the legal system. Margaret's face lost all its color. Are you threatening me? Your daughter gave that money willingly, and now that you are breaking up, you want it back? Have you no shame? I did not want to hear any more. Over the past 3 years, I had tolerated enough. I used to think that older people sometimes had hot tempers. I thought every family had its difficult moments. I thought that loving Julian meant learning to love his entire family. But today I finally understood. Some people do not need love. They only look for your vulnerabilities to step in and take everything away, bit by bit. I looked at Julian. Stand up. Stop kneeling. I cannot accept this kind of begging. He shook his head, his eyes red. Elena, please do not listen to my mom. I was wrong. I was really wrong. But please do not cancel the wedding, okay? The invitations are sent out. The venue is booked. Our relatives on both sides all know. If we cancel now, how am I supposed to explain this? I felt my heart ache. But this time, the pain did not soften me. It only made me more clear-headed. What he was afraid of was not losing me. He was afraid of losing face. Julian was paralyzed. I continued, my voice low but distinct. If I had stayed silent and signed that contract today, the condo would be in Chloe's name. After we got married, your mother would use the excuse of family duty to pressure you a second time, a third time, 100th time, and you would force me to sacrifice for you, for your mom, for your sister. But who would sacrifice for me? He lowered his head, tears hitting the marble floor. Before, just seeing him cry would have thrown me into a panic. But now, I only felt entirely hollow. If you are moved by this story, please like and subscribe to the channel to support me. I wish all the listeners great health and peace. Margaret suddenly lunged forward, pointing her finger right at my face. Do not think you are so great just because you are dumping my Julian. You are 28 years old, a woman with a broken engagement. Let us see who dares to marry you after this. My son has plenty of women chasing him. When you regret this, do not come crawling back begging. I looked at her and suddenly found it hilarious. Perhaps in her eyes, a woman's life only had value when chosen by a man. She did not know that my biggest fear was not remaining unmarried, but marrying the wrong man who would turn my life into a supply closet for his entire family to drain. I grabbed my purse and stood up. Then I wish your son the best of luck finding someone willing to drop $500,000 to buy a condo for his sister. I turned to the agent. Lucas, please cancel the contract today. Please return all the personal documents I submitted. Lucas nodded frantically, his face still pale. Yes, ma'am, absolutely. I will handle it right now. Julian scrambled to his feet in a panic and lunged forward, grabbing my wrist. Elena, do not go. I am begging you. Give me a chance to explain. I looked down at the hand gripping my wrist. In the past, that hand used to make me feel warm. Now, it only suffocated me. I pried his fingers off one by one. Let go of me. Julian, from the moment you kneeled down to force me to give up that condo, we were already done. With that, I walked out of the closing room. Behind me, Margaret's shrill curses echoed down the hall. Julian's hoarse voice called my name, followed by the chaotic sound of a chair crashing to the floor. But I did not turn back. I was afraid that if I turned around, I would see the shattered remains of my 3 years of youth lying under that man's feet. I walked out of the building, my heels clicking coldly against the polished stone floor. The sales gallery was still brightly lit, still smelling of luxurious essential oils. There were still agents in suits smiling at clients, but to my eyes, everything had suddenly become distorted. Just a few minutes ago, I thought I was about to step into a warm marriage, yet now, behind me was the sound of 3 years of love shattering, the curses of a future mother-in-law, and the desperate cries of the man I had once wanted to spend my life with. Elena, Julian chased me all the way to the sliding glass doors. I heard his frantic footsteps behind me, but I did not stop. He blocked my path. His hair was slightly messy, his eyes red and swollen. He looked so pitiful that if I were the woman from yesterday, I might have caved. But the woman I was right now was just exhausted. Can you just listen to me one time? He pleaded. I looked at him. What else is there to say? He swallowed hard, his voice shaking. I did not know my mom was going to say such harsh things. I did not want to force you either. It is just that my family is really struggling. Chloe is still young. My mom worries about her too much and did not think it through. Can you just be generous this once? Let us just treat today as a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding. I repeated the word, feeling a bitter lump in my throat. You knew the condo was going to be in Chloe's name. You planned to let me sign it and explain later. You kneeled in front of me not to protect me, but to force me to yield. And you call that a misunderstanding? Julian's face went pale. Elena, I was wrong. I was truly wrong. But we have been in love for 3 years. Are you really going to throw me away over a condo? I let out a laugh, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill. It is not because of a condo. It is because when it came down to choosing between fairness and your family's greed, you chose them. It is because you watched me get insulted and chose to stay silent. It is because you knew my mother was putting down $500,000, yet you still thought putting the condo in your sister's name was acceptable. Julian, the condo was just the thing that exposed who you truly are. He stepped back as if he had been slapped. Just then, his phone rang. The screen flashed Chloe's name. He clumsily declined the call, but it immediately started ringing again. I stared at that screen, an uncomfortable intuition flashing through my mind. If a younger sister just wanted a dowry, she would not be calling so frantically at this exact moment. I asked, Is Chloe in some kind of trouble? Julian froze. No, nothing is wrong. I looked straight into his eyes. He was a terrible liar. He avoided my gaze. That avoidance alone confirmed all my suspicions. I remembered Margaret's unusual impatience. I remembered how she insisted the contract had to be signed today. I remembered her saying the condo must be under Chloe's name, acting as if the sky would fall if they waited another day. It turned out that behind the excuse of a dowry, there was likely a completely different reason. The glass doors opened, and I stepped outside. Julian quickly reached out to hold the door. Elena, stop digging into this. I will handle Chloe's situation myself, I replied coldly. So there is a situation. His lips moved, but no words came out. I walked down the steps. I saw Julian standing paralyzed at the entrance, his face a mix of fear and sheer desperation. For the first time in 3 years, I realized this man was not just weak, he was hiding far too many things from me. Out on the street, the Chicago sun beat down harshly. I stood on the sidewalk, my hands still trembling, but my back was straight. I refused to let myself collapse here, not in front of the people who had just treated me like a piece of property to be haggled over. I pulled out my phone and called my mother. Mom, I want to ask you honestly. Did you ever run a background check on Julian's family? My mother was silent for a few seconds before answering. Yes. My heart clenched. What did you know? Her voice was low and sad. I knew his mother was greedy and his sister was reckless with money. And I knew Julian was too dependent on his family. But I did not tell you because you loved him. I wanted you to see it for yourself. There are some lessons that, if told by someone else, you will assume are out of malice. Only when you feel the pain yourself will you be awake enough to walk away. I bit my lip hard, and the tears finally fell. Mom, it hurts so much. This time, her voice was much gentler. It hurts. And that is okay, because your love was real. But Elena, hurting today is better than hurting for a lifetime. Wait right there. I am sending someone to pick you up. I was about to reply when a familiar black Lincoln Navigator pulled up right in front of me. The back door opened, and Miss Harper, my mother's personal assistant, stepped out. She was wearing her usual sharp gray suit, looking as strictly professional as ever, but her eyes held deep sympathy when she looked at me. Miss Elena, the CEO sent me to pick you up. I froze. As soon as the word CEO was spoken, a few of the real estate agents standing nearby whipped their heads around. I saw Julian running down the steps toward me. He heard it loud and clear. In that exact moment, his face went as white as a sheet of paper. I knew then that the secret I had kept for 3 years was finally out. Julian stood frozen on the sidewalk, his eyes glued to Miss Harper as if he were witnessing something impossible. I knew he recognized her. Miss Harper was a senior executive assistant who frequently appeared next to my mother at Apex Holdings corporate events. A project management director like Julian could not possibly fail to recognize her face. He just never imagined that the woman he casually referred to as your mom, whom he thought was just a retired professor, was actually the CEO his entire company spoke of with absolute reverence. Elena. He stepped off the curb, his voice cracking. Who did Miss Harper just call CEO? I looked at him, feeling strangely calm. You heard her perfectly well. The color drained from his face, shifting from white to an ashen gray. Margaret came running out of the building, panting heavily, her mouth still open from the curses she had been yelling inside. She looked at Miss Harper, then at the sleek luxury SUV parked on the street. Her aggressive demeanor faltered, but her nature did not allow her to stay quiet for long. CEO? What CEO? Are you people putting on a play to scare my family? Miss Harper ignored her completely. She stepped closer to me and gently opened the car door. Miss Elena, the CEO, said if you want to go to the family estate, I will take you there. If you prefer your private apartment, I will take you there. Everything else will be handled by our legal and HR departments. The moment the words HR department dropped, Julian snapped out of his daze as if he had been violently shaken. He lunged toward Miss Harper. Miss Harper, what do you mean by HR? Does the CEO know about what happened today? Please speak to her for me. This is just a family dispute. It has nothing to do with work. Miss Harper looked at him with icy indifference. Mr. Julian, your family dispute has nothing to do with work, but the discrepancies in the Riverfront project files, the fraudulent expense advances, and the 3 forged vendor invoices certainly do. Julian stood dead in his tracks. I turned to look at him, a chill running straight down my spine. So it was not just about the condo. It turned out my mother knew a lot more than I had thought. I asked quietly, "What else have you been hiding from me?" Julian shook his head frantically. "Nothing. Elena, please do not listen to this. It is a misunderstanding. The corporate environment is complicated. Sometimes subordinates make errors on paperwork. I just signed off on them following standard protocol." Miss Harper pulled a thin file from her briefcase and handed it to me. "Miss Elena, the CEO instructed me not to give this to you unless you asked. But if you want to know, this is the preliminary summary." I took the pages. The words blurred before my eyes. Julian used to say he built his career on pure merit, boasting that his director position was the result of years of hard work. Yet in that summary were irregular entertainment expenses, his signature on grossly inflated line items, and notes detailing how he repeatedly used the company's name as leverage to secure private loans for family members. I looked up at him. Chloe owes people money, does she not? His lips trembled uncontrollably. Elena, I asked again. Chloe owes people money, does she not? He lowered his head, his voice barely a whisper. She She just accidentally broke a display piece at a VIP lounge downtown. They demanded $50,000 in damages. My mom was terrified they would escalate it, so she wanted the condo in Chloe's name to use as collateral for a loan. He did not need to say anything more. His silence was enough. Margaret was now genuinely panicking. She pushed her way forward and tried to grab my arm. Elena, sweetie, listen to me. I was just hot-headed earlier and spoke out of turn. The truth is, I love you dearly. The condo can stay in your name, all in your name. I will figure out Chloe's situation myself. Please do not hold this against us. I stepped back, avoiding her hand. Do you love me? Or do you love my mother's $500,000? Julian suddenly dropped to his knees again, right there on the sidewalk. This time, it was not in a private room, but in full view of the agents, pedestrians, and the building's security guards. Elena, I am begging you. You can hit me, you can scream at me, but please do not let the company fire me. If I lose my job at Apex, I really lose everything. I looked at him, my heart aching with a dull, suffocating pain. Even at this moment, his biggest fear was still not losing me. He was afraid of losing his job, his status, and the upward mobility he had bragged about to so many people. I spoke slowly. Julian, if you had stood up and protected me even once today, I might have felt some regret. But you kneeled the first time to force me to give up my home, and you kneeled the second time to beg for your job. In both instances, you never once kneeled because you genuinely cared that I was hurting. He looked up, his eyes bloodshot. I love you. I shook my head. No, you love the life you thought I could give you. With that, I turned and got into the car. The door closed, shutting out his desperate cries. Through the tinted glass, I saw Margaret rooted to the spot, while Julian remained kneeling on the sun-baked pavement. The car pulled away, taking me from the place that was supposed to be the start of my happily ever after. But in reality, it was just the place where I finally saw the true price of loving the wrong person. The car navigated out of the luxury district, leaving behind the glittering glass towers and the man kneeling in the sun. I sat in the back seat, my hands resting on my knees, my fingernails digging so deeply into my palms that it burned. I was not crying anymore. There are moments when the pain is so immense that tears simply feel redundant. Miss Harper checked on me through the rearview mirror, her voice softer than usual. Miss Elena, would you like to go to the main estate or your private apartment? I stared at the heavy traffic outside the window. Chicago was as loud and bustling as ever, as if nothing had happened. People were still going to work, still making calls, still laughing. Only my world had just collapsed. Take me to my private apartment, please. Miss Harper nodded without asking any further questions. I knew my mother was probably waiting for a call, but at that moment, I did not have the courage to hear her voice. I was afraid that if she asked a simple, "Are you okay?" I would completely break down like a child. My phone vibrated relentlessly. Julian called, Margaret called, an unknown number called, and then Chloe called. I stared at the names flashing on the screen, my heart turning ice cold. Over the past 3 years, whenever their numbers popped up, I would rush to answer, afraid they had an emergency. Now I understood. What they needed was never me. They needed my wallet, my endless tolerance, and a soft-hearted woman they could dump all their burdens onto. I muted the ringer. But just a few minutes later, Miss Harper's phone rang. She answered, and her expression instantly turned serious. Yes, CEO. My heart skipped a beat. Miss Harper listened for a moment, then handed the phone back to me. Miss Elena, the CEO would like to speak with you. I took the phone, my throat tight. Mom. On the other end, my mother paused for a second before saying, My daughter, I am sorry. Just those words were enough to make the tears I was holding back spill over. She was not the one at fault, yet she apologized for letting me crash into such a painful lesson on my own. It is not your fault, Mom. It is. I knew that family was toxic, but I let you make your own choice. I thought you needed the right to love, to make mistakes, and to wake up. But I never anticipated they would have the audacity to use my money to corner you like this. I bit my lip, trying to steady my voice. Mom, is the stuff about Julian's company records true? Her voice immediately turned sharp. Yes, I had him audited a while ago but held off on taking action because of you. His files have major discrepancies. It is not quite at the level of criminal fraud yet, but it is more than enough to terminate his contract and blacklist him from any major projects. Elena, I am not punishing him because he lost you. I am dealing with him because he broke the rules. I closed my eyes, a wave of both pain and humiliation washing over me. I used to be so proud of Julian. I thought he was a man of capability, drive, and a bright future. It turned out that behind his polished director title were shady expense reports, dirty signatures, and secrets hidden behind the gentle smiles he gave me. Mom, I want to know who Chloe owes money to. Do not get involved. Mom, I need to know, because if I do not, I will keep blaming myself for being too ruthless. A heavy sigh came through the receiver. Chloe likes to party at a very exclusive VIP lounge downtown. She broke a vintage clock belonging to a high-end client and was demanded to pay $50,000 in damages. But that is not all. She also took out predatory loans from payday apps and private lenders. The total is around $75,000. Margaret wanted the condo in her name to use as collateral to pay off the debts before things blew up. I opened my eyes, staring blankly ahead. $75,000. And yet Margaret had the nerve to call it a dowry. And Julian had kneeled down to beg me to yield. They did not just want a house. They wanted to turn me into a life raft to save their entire family, and then continue to bleed me dry using the excuse of being family. I let out a tearful laugh. Mom, I almost married a man like that. Not almost. You stopped in time. That sentence felt like a hand pulling me out of a swamp. Yes, I stopped in time. It hurt, but I was still in time. If you are moved by this story, please like and subscribe to the channel to support me. I wish all the listeners great health and peace. The car pulled up to my small apartment in Lincoln Park. This was the place I bought with my own savings and some help from my mom right after college. No one in Julian's family knew about it. I had planned to keep it as a quiet retreat for myself after the wedding. I never expected that today. It would be the only place I could breathe. I had just stepped out of the car when a taxi screeched to a halt right behind us. The door flew open. Julian scrambled out, his face pale, his suit wrinkled, gasping for air. Elena, I knew you would come here. Just let me talk to you one last time. My blood ran cold. He did not know about this apartment. I had never brought him here. So who told him? Seeing my expression, he quickly explained, I saw the address on your driver's license once. I just wanted to find you. I did not mean any harm. I took a step back. Julian, did you stalk me? He shook his head frantically. No, I love you. I was just terrified of losing you. Right at that moment, Miss Harper stepped between us. Her voice was perfectly calm, but sharp as a scalpel. Mr. Julian, the CEO has given strict orders. If you continue to harass Miss Elena, we will call building security and file a police report right here, right now. Julian looked at me over Miss Harper's shoulder, his eyes bloodshot, his voice raspy. Elena, if you push me to a dead end, do not expect me to stay quiet. After 3 years, I know plenty of your secrets too. I froze. The pain in my chest instantly transformed into an icy chill. The man who had just claimed to love me was finally showing his true claws. I stared at Julian, and in that moment, the heartbreak was entirely replaced by something far colder. The man who used to carefully blow on my soup when I was sick with a fever, the man who promised he would always be my rock whenever I was tired, was now standing outside my private home, using our 3 years of history to threaten me. What did you just say? My voice was very soft, but that softness made Julian falter. Perhaps he recognized that there was not a single trace of sympathy left in my tone. He swallowed hard, his eyes darting between Miss Harper and me. Elena, I do not want to do this, but do not force my hand. I lost my job. My mom is panicking, and Chloe has loan sharks breathing down her neck. If you let your mother completely blackball me in the industry, how am I supposed to survive? I just want you to talk to the CEO and ask her to let me go this one time. I let out a soft laugh. You sure adapted to calling my mother CEO quickly. His face flushed dark red with humiliation, but he forced his voice lower. I know I was wrong today. I know my mom was wrong too. But think about it. If the news of this canceled wedding gets out, people are going to gossip about you. The invitations are sent, the engagement photos are done, our friends and families all know. You are the daughter of the CEO of Apex Holdings. If people find out you were bullied by your future in-laws into signing away your house, will you not be embarrassed? Every single word pierced my ears. I could not believe that even now, he was using the very things society uses to shackle women's reputation, saving face, public gossip, to force me to bow my head. I looked at him for a long time, looking until the very last of my good memories faded away completely. Julian, Do you really think I am more afraid of losing face than I am of marrying the wrong man? He was silenced. I took a step forward, standing face to face with him. Miss. Harper reached out slightly to stop me, but I shook my head. For 3 years, I hid my identity not because I was ashamed of it, but because I wanted to know if the person standing next to me truly cared for me when I did not have a halo of wealth behind me. You have given me my answer. As for the gossip, let them talk. I would rather the whole world know I canceled my wedding because I woke up, rather than quietly step into a rotting marriage just to save face. Julian's lips trembled. He lowered his voice to a near whimper. Elena, I do not want to threaten you. I am just so scared. Just help me this one last time. I promise I will disappear from your life after this. I looked at him, feeling a profound sadness welling up from the bottom of my heart. It turns out, when someone who truly loves you begs, you feel compassion. But when someone who only fears losing their benefits begs, you just feel exhausted. How exactly do you want me to help you? His eyes instantly lit up. That spark sent a chill down my spine because it was not the hope of love. It was the hope of a cornered animal seeing a way out. Call your mom. Tell the CEO to rescind the termination. Do not blow up the project files issue. And as for Chloe's debt, if you could just front me a little bit of cash, I will pay you back in installments. How much is a little bit? He looked down, muttering, $75,000. I stayed quiet for a few seconds, then laughed. I laughed until my eyes burned. Even at this stage, he still believed that all he had to do was lower his head, and I would pull out my wallet to save his entire family. $75,000 rolled off his tongue as easily as an apology, while my 3 years of youth were placed dead last, not even worth a sincere confession. Julian, listen to me carefully. I have no obligation to save your sister, and I certainly have no obligation to use my money to cover up your corporate fraud. He turned pale. Elena, are you really this heartless? No. I just finally learned how to set boundaries. Right then, Miss Harper's phone rang. She answered it, her expression turning severe, and handed the phone to me. Miss Elena, it is the CEO. I took the phone. My mother's voice was perfectly composed. Elena, put me on speaker. I did as told. Julian stiffened the moment he heard my mother's voice. My mother spoke. Julian, I am giving you exactly one last chance. You have 10 minutes to leave my daughter's property. From this moment on, you and your family are forbidden from calling, texting, visiting, or using any method to pressure Elena. If you continue, the legal team at Apex Holdings will not only pursue charges for harassment, but we will fully prosecute the fraudulent project files you managed during your tenure. Julian's voice shook. CEO, please let me explain. My mother cut him off. I am not your friend, and my daughter is no longer your fiancé. That sentence dropped like a pair of scissors, cleanly severing the last remaining thread. Julian stood frozen, his face ashen. He looked at me as if searching for a shred of pity, but I had nothing left to give him. Miss Harper signaled the building security guards. 2 guards approached, polite but firm. Sir, please leave the premises. Julian backed away, his bloodshot eyes locked onto me. Elena, you are going to regret this, I replied very softly. The only thing I regret is not seeing you clearly sooner. He was escorted off the property by security. I stood there, watching his silhouette disappear beyond the gates. This time, I did not cry. I only felt a heavy door inside my chest finally slam shut. It was painful, but absolutely necessary. I turned and walked into the elevator. As the stainless steel doors reflected my pale face, I told myself, from today on, the person I have to save is no longer Julian, nor his family, but myself. The door to my apartment clicked shut behind me. I stood in the dark for a very long time. My small apartment was exactly as I had left it. The cream-colored curtains, the gray sofa, the bookshelf against the wall, the dried flowers on the coffee table that had faded over time. Everything was so quiet that I could hear the heavy thud of my own heartbeat in my chest. Just this morning, I had been thinking about picking out curtains for our new condo, planning what flowers to plant on the balcony, dreaming of our first home-cooked meal after the wedding. And now, I stood here, my hands still cold, my heart still aching, leaving behind a marriage that shattered before it even began, destroyed by greed and cowardice. I kicked off my heels and walked barefoot into the living room. Every step felt like walking on invisible shards of glass. I threw my purse onto the sofa. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was an unknown number. I stared at it for a few seconds before rejecting the call. Immediately, A text message popped up. Elena, it is Chloe. Please answer the phone. If you do not help me, I am dead. I stared at the message, no longer surprised. Perhaps after Julian was escorted out of my building, his family had quickly pivoted to a new tactic. When the mother's screaming failed, it was time for the sisters' tears. They always knew how to find a person's soft spot and dig the knife in. A second text arrived rapidly. The thing about the condo was all my mom's idea. I did not know anything about it, but I really am being forced to pay up. You used to love me. Can you just save me this one time? I let out a bitter chuckle. Used to love me. Yes, I really did care for Chloe. She was 6 years younger than me, always sweet-talking, always calling me her future sister-in-law. Whenever we met, she would hug my arm and pout, asking me to help her pick out dresses, asking me to order expensive makeup for her, asking me to spot her the cash, and promising to pay me back next month. Next month never came. I never held it against her because I thought we were soon to be family. Looking back, I only felt pitifully naive. The phone lit up again. Elena, if you do not answer, I am going to come kneel at your front door. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and called the number back. She answered almost instantly. Chloe's loud sobbing echoed through the speaker, mixed with Margaret's distant wailing in the background. Elena, please save me. I know you are the best. I did not mean to break their stuff. They are forcing me to pay $50,000, plus the loans I took out. Now they are threatening to come to our house. My mom was just so scared. That is why she thought about the condo. I never meant to steal your house. I sat down on the sofa, my voice perfectly steady. You did not mean to steal my house, but you still agreed to have it put in your name. The other end went dead silent. I could hear Chloe's heavy, panicked breathing. A moment later, she mumbled, I thought since you and Julian were getting married, it would be shared property anyway. My mom said you were rich, you would not miss one condo. I laughed softly, though my eyes burned. Chloe, just because I am not short on money does not mean you have the right to take it. Your mother loves you, so she tried to secure a condo for you, not so you could mortgage it to pay off the mess you made. You are 22 years old. If you cause trouble, you take responsibility for it. She cried louder. But I do not have any money. Julian is about to lose his job too. If you abandon us, my whole family is going to die. I gripped the phone tightly. No one dies from paying the price for their own mistakes. People only die slowly when they live entirely off the pity of others. Right then, the call waiting beeped. It was my mother. I said to Chloe, do not call me again. From now on, any issues involving money, you can handle with the law and your creditors. I am not your family's personal ATM. I hung up before she could start screaming again. The room returned to silence. But my hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. I answered the incoming call. Mom, Elena, are you okay? I looked into the dark room, tears silently sliding down my face. I thought I was, but I guess I am not. Her voice softened. You do not have to be okay right away. You just lost someone you wanted to marry. Even if you did not deserve it, the pain is real. I pulled a throw pillow to my chest and, for the first time, sobbed out loud. Mom, I really thought he was a good person. I thought if I loved him genuinely, I would get genuine love in return. How did it end up like this? My mother was quiet for a moment before speaking, because kindness, when placed in the wrong hands, just becomes a ladder for others to climb on and hurt you. But my daughter, do not let one terrible person make you doubt your own heart. You were not wrong for loving truly. The error was that they did not deserve to receive that love. I cried until I could barely breathe. All the frustration I had bottled up from the closing room, the lobby, Julian's threats, and Chloe's sobbing finally poured out. I stopped trying to be strong. In my small apartment, I allowed myself to collapse. I allowed myself to hurt. I allowed myself to admit that 3 years could not simply be erased by calling off a wedding. That night, I sat on the living room floor for a long time. Outside the window, the city lights were still shining. Cars still drove by in endless streams. The world outside did not stop for my heartbreak, and I knew I could not stay stuck forever on a man who chose to abandon me exactly when I needed him most. Close to midnight, Miss Harper sent me a text. The CEO has instructed the legal department to prepare the files. Tomorrow morning, if you are ready, the CEO would like to see you at the corporate office. I stared at those words for a long time. Then I wiped my tears and replied, I will be there tomorrow morning. The moment I hit send, I knew a soft, vulnerable part of me had just died. But another part was waking up. A part that knew how to protect itself better, colder, harder, but absolutely necessary for me to move forward. The next morning, I woke up before the sun was fully out. I had barely slept, tossing and turning. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Julian kneeling on the marble floor. I saw Margaret pointing her finger at my face, and I saw my phone screen lighting up with Chloe's desperate pleas. I stood in front of the mirror for a long time. The woman staring back had red, swollen eyes and a pale face, but her gaze was no longer as lost as yesterday. I put on light makeup, tied my hair neatly at the nape of my neck, and chose a crisp white blouse and black tailored trousers. It was not my most glamorous outfit, but it was the one that made me feel like I could stand tall. When Miss Harper's car stopped in front of the Apex Holdings Tower, I looked up at the top floor where my mother had worked for decades. In the past, whenever I walked past this building, I tried to keep my distance. I was afraid people would know I was her daughter. I was afraid all my hard work would be dismissed as nepotism. But today, I understood something very clearly. Hiding my identity did not make me more pure, nor did it make bad people more decent. Someone who truly cares would not change how they treat me based on what I have. A greedy person, no matter how well I hide my background, will always find a way to extract every bit of value from my kindness. I walked into the main lobby. Many eyes immediately darted toward me since Miss Harper was walking right beside me. Some recognized me, some whispered, some hastily bowed their heads in greeting. I caught bits of conversation. Is that Elena, the CEO's daughter? Really? I heard she was just working at some small startup. I did not stop. Every step echoing on the stone floor made me feel like I was shedding an old version of myself. The private executive elevator took me to the top floor. As the doors opened, my mother was already standing at the end of the hallway. She was wearing a black pantsuit, her hair in a low bun, looking as poised as always. But when she saw me, her eyes softened. I walked toward her, and before I could say a word, she pulled me into a hug. "You are home." Those 3 words nearly shattered the emotional armor I had spent all morning building. I hugged her, my voice choked. "Mom, I am sorry. I made you worry." "No, you did exceptionally well. You knew when to stop, and that is enough." Inside the adjacent boardroom, the legal and HR teams were already waiting. Spread out on the table were the files regarding Julian, his suspension notice, internal audit reports, logs of unauthorized expense, advances, and emails with subcontractors. I looked at the paperwork, a dull ache in my heart. The man who used to sit on the curb eating sandwiches with me, who talked about building his future with his own 2 hands, had ultimately ended up as a name in a corporate fraud dossier. The head of legal spoke up. "CEO, if we proceed according to standard protocol, Mr. Julian will be terminated for severe violations of financial project procedures. The exact financial damages are currently being verified by independent auditors. If we find clear evidence of embezzlement, the company can forward the case to the authorities." My mother looked at me. "Elena, your relationship is your personal matter, but company matters must follow protocol. I want you to hear this so you understand I am not using my power to take revenge on your behalf." I nodded. "I understand. Punish him for exactly what he did wrong. I am not asking for leniency, nor am I asking you to be harsher on him." Just then, the desk phone in the boardroom rang. The secretary answered, her expression shifting slightly before looking at my mother. "CEO, Margaret Hayes is in the downstairs lobby. She is causing a scene, demanding to see you and Miss Elena." The atmosphere in the room instantly grew heavy. I clenched my fists. I thought that after everything yesterday, Margaret would at least have some fear, but I had vastly overestimated her dignity. My mother calmly instructed, "Escort her to the 3rd-floor reception room. Do not bring her to the executive floor." My mother looked at me. "Should I let you see them?" She frowned slightly. "Are you sure?" "I am sure. Yesterday, I walked away because it hurt too much. Today, I want to say my final piece." 10 minutes later, I walked into the 3rd-floor reception room. Margaret was sitting on the couch, her hair disheveled, dark circles under her eyes. The moment she saw me, she sprang to her feet, completely stripped of her previous arrogance. She rushed toward me, trying to grab my hands. "Elena, I was wrong. I am old and foolish. Please do not hold it against me. Talk to your mother. Let Julian have his job back. If he loses his job, how is our family supposed to survive?" I stepped out of her reach, looking straight into the face that had sneered at me yesterday. "Did you come here because you care about your son? Or because you realized you have no one else left to pay Chloe's debts? Her face twitched. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. If you are moved by this story, please like and subscribe to the channel to support me. I wish all the listeners great health and peace. Right at that moment, the door burst open. Chloe rushed in, her face streaked with tears, her clothes rumpled. She looked at me with red, swollen eyes, but the first thing out of her mouth was not an apology. Elena, if you do not save me, they are going to post videos of me online. Do you really want me to be publicly ruined? I looked at the girl who used to call me her sister-in-law with honey-sweet words, and my heart turned to pure ice. Even now, they still believed that by using tears, reputation, family ties, and sheer panic, they could drag me back into being their sacrificial lamb. I stared at Chloe, standing trembling in front of me, her hair a mess, her makeup smeared. If this were in the past, I probably would have stepped forward to hug her, asked her if she was hurt or scared, and softened enough to find a way to help. But in this moment, all I could see was the $1.2 million condo they had almost put in her name, ready to be mortgaged to fill the sinkhole she had dug for herself. What video? Chloe bit her lip, her eyes darting to her mother for help. Margaret quickly jumped in. It was nothing, just a little scuffle she got into while out with friends. Those people recorded it and threatened to post it online. A girl's reputation would be destroyed if that got out. Elena, I know I was wrong yesterday, but please, just have pity on your sister this one time. I looked at her. You are still calling me your daughter very naturally, are you not? Margaret froze, her face turning ghostly pale. Chloe burst into tears. Elena, I am sorry. I am truly sorry. I did not know it would turn out like this. I just thought you were rich. Helping me would not hurt you. I never thought you would cancel the wedding with Julian. Hearing that made my blood run cold. She was not remorseful for trying to take my house. She was only remorseful because I had refused to sit quietly and let her take it. I asked slowly, did you know that condo was paid for by my mother? She looked down. Yes. Did you know that if the condo was in your name, legally, it would be your asset? She stayed silent. Did you know that if you used that condo as collateral, me and your brother would not have a home for our marriage? She cried louder. I was just so scared. I was not thinking about all that. I nodded, feeling no urge to yell or get angry. Some selfishness does not require deep scheming. It simply comes from being spoiled for so long that you expect the rest of the world to yield to you. Chloe was exactly like that. Margaret was like that too. And Julian, he was the man who saw all of it but still chose to bow to them. The door opened again, and my mother walked in. She did not raise her voice, but her presence instantly made the room fall dead silent. Margaret saw my mother and immediately lunged forward. Madam CEO, I am begging you. You are a mother, you understand. My child made a mistake, and I was foolish. Please spare Julian. Spare Chloe. Our family is truly at a dead end. My mother did not let Margaret touch her. Miss Harper smoothly stepped in to block her path. My mother looked at Margaret, her voice steady. You came here to beg for mercy. Yet from the very beginning, I have not heard a single proper apology directed at my daughter. Everything you have said is about begging for your son's job, begging for money for your daughter, begging to save your family's reputation. Did you ever stop to think how much my daughter hurt when you bullied her on the day she was supposed to sign for her marital home? When you insulted her, threatened her, and used her for 3 years? Margaret opened her mouth, then broke down sobbing. I was wrong. I am sorry, Elena. I am truly sorry. I watched those tears, not knowing how much of it was regret, and how much was pure terror, but it no longer mattered. My mother turned to Chloe. And you are 22 years old. You borrow money, cause trouble, and party in places far beyond your means. That was your choice. No one has the right to use my daughter as a human shield for your mistakes, Chloe sobbed. But if they post the video... My mother cut her off. If someone is threatening to distribute private images of you, we can advise you to file a police report. If your debts are legally binding, you must pay them. If the loans involve illegal loan sharks, the law will handle it. But under no circumstances will Elena pay a single cent to buy your peace of mind. I looked at my mother, seeing clearly for the first time the boundary between helping and enabling. She was not leaving them to face physical danger, but she was absolutely not going to let them continue to leech off me under the guise of being pitiful. Just then, Julian rushed into the room. He must have been stopped in the lobby but managed to find a way up. Seeing his mother and sister crying, he immediately turned to me. Elena, are you satisfied now? Did you really need to see my entire family on their knees to be happy? That sentence was the final drop in an already overflowing glass. I stood up and looked him dead in the eye. Julian, the person making your mother cry is you. The people who spoiled your sister until she had no fear of consequences are you and your mother. The person who pushed me forward as a sacrificial lamb was also you. Stop blaming the collapse of your family on me. He froze. I walked over and placed my engagement ring on the table. From this second on, everything between us is completely over. Take this back. And if you continue to harass, threaten, or smear my name, I will not let old feelings hold me back from retaliating. Julian stared at the ring, his eyes turning red, but this time, I did not see love in his eyes. I only saw a man finally realizing he had truly lost everything. He looked at the ring on the table as if looking at something that had slipped through his fingers forever. The small diamond was still bright, still cold, still flawless. Only the person who used to wear it no longer wanted it. He reached out, but his fingertips stopped just before touching it. It was as if the object was no longer a token of love, but physical evidence of everything he had thrown away. Elena, do you really have to go this far? I stood completely still, my voice no longer shaking. It is not me going this far. It is you and your family who pushed things to this point. Margaret slumped back onto the couch, covering her face and sobbing uncontrollably. Chloe pressed herself against the wall, her eyes swollen, looking terrified and pitiful. But I refused to let my heart be dragged back toward them. I used to pity his poverty, his hardships, the stories he told me about being raised by a struggling single mother. But after yesterday, I realized that poverty itself is not a crime. What is a crime is using your hardships as an excuse to exploit the efforts of others. My mother gestured to Miss Harper, who placed a document file on the table. This is a mutual non-disclosure and no-contact agreement. The terms are very clear. Starting today, Mr. Julian and his family are forbidden from contacting, harassing, threatening, or defaming Elena, nor may you use any of her personal images, messages, or information. If you violate this, our legal team will take immediate action. Julian snapped his head up. CEO, doing this is no different than backing me into a corner. My mother looked at him, her gaze icy but not malicious. A corner is where a person ends up when they have no choices left. You had plenty of choices, but you chose wrong every single time. You chose to stay silent when your mother insulted my daughter. You chose to kneel to force her to give up her home. You chose to use your job and debts to guilt-trip her. You even chose to threaten her outside her apartment. Now, you have to face the consequences. That is not being backed into a corner. That is paying the price. Julian was struck speechless. I saw his shoulders slump. This was the first time I had ever seen him unable to find an excuse. In the past, he always had a reason because his mom suffered, because his sister was young, because he was the man of the house, because his family needed him. But none of those reasons were enough to cover up the truth that he never genuinely stood by my side. Miss Harper pushed a pen toward him. Mr. Julian, please read it carefully and sign. If you refuse, the legal department will send a formal notice and handle this through much stricter procedures. Margaret quickly looked up. Julian, sign it. Sign it so we can leave quietly. Do not let them sue us. I am terrified. Julian turned to look at his mother, a deep, bitter resentment flashing in his eyes. Perhaps at this very moment, he finally realized that the mother he always bowed his head to protect was also the first person urging him to sign away his rights the moment danger approached. But he did not fight it. He picked up the pen, his hand shaking violently, and signed his name at the bottom of the agreement. When his pen stopped moving, I felt something inside me drop very softly, but incredibly heavy. 3 years of love, 3 years of waiting, 3 years of convincing myself that if I just tried a little harder, I would find happiness. It all ended with a cold signature on a piece of paper. Julian put the pen down and looked at me with bloodshot eyes. Elena, did you ever truly love me? I looked at him. The question made my heart ache. Even now, what hurt the most was not the condo, not the money, not the threats. What hurt the most was that I had truly loved him. If that love had been fake, I would not be in this much pain. I replied, yes, because I truly loved you. I truly hurt today. But truly loving someone does not mean forgiving them forever when they do not cherish me. He lowered his head, tears dripping onto the back of his hand. I was wrong. I did not reply. The words "I was wrong" could have saved a lot of things had they been spoken before he kneeled to pressure me. Now, it was just like opening an umbrella after the hurricane had already ripped the roof off the house. My mother stood up. "Miss." Harper escorted them out. Margaret stumbled as she pulled Chloe up. Before reaching the door, Chloe turned back to look at me, her voice small. "Elena, I really am sorry." This time, I did not scold her. I just said, "In the future, do not make other people pay the price for your mistakes." She burst into tears but kept her head down and walked away. Julian was the last to leave. As he passed me, he paused for a second as if wanting to say something else, but ultimately, he just picked up the ring from the table, clenched it tightly in his fist, and quietly left the room. The door clicked shut. The room was so quiet I could hear my own breathing. I tried to stand up straight, but the moment they were out of sight, my knees gave out. My mother walked over and held me. "Cry, let it out." I buried my face in her shoulder. This time, I did not try to be strong. I cried for the love that died, for the trust that shattered, for the girl who thought endurance was the key to keeping a happy home. But amidst the crying, I also knew I had just pulled myself away from a life that could have been 100 times more painful. After Julian's family left the corporate office, I sat with my mother for a long time in the small top-floor boardroom. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Chicago sprawled out below like an ocean of packed buildings. The cars formed tiny rivers of light. I used to think that as long as I stayed away from this place, far from the massive shadow of my mother, I could find a normal life, a normal love, a man who loved me just for me. But it turns out, the lesson I needed to learn was not how to run from who I was, but how to live gracefully with it, to use it to protect myself, rather than letting others exploit my kindness. My mother placed a glass of warm water in front of me. "Do you want to take a few days off?" I shook my head. My voice was hoarse from crying, but my mind felt clearer than yesterday. "No. I want to work." She looked at me for a long time. "Are you sure?" "Do not use work to run away from the pain. I am not running. I just do not want to sit still and wait for the pain to swallow me whole." My mother nodded slightly. In her eyes, there was a very gentle light, a mix of sympathy and immense pride. "Then, starting today, you will shadow me on the executive board. Not because you are my daughter and get special privileges. I am giving you real work, real pressure, and real responsibility. Can you handle it?" I looked straight at her. "I can handle it." The door opened, and Miss Harper walked in with a fresh stack of files. "CEO, the termination notice for Mr. Julian has been sent out by HR. The internal audit team also confirmed 2 more irregular payments related to his subcontractors." My heart pinched slightly at the sound of his name, but I did not tremble anymore. The wound was still there, but it no longer had the power to pull me backward. My mother looked at me. "Elena, read this file. Not to hurt yourself more, but to understand something. In business, just like in marriage, trust cannot replace verification. Believing in people is necessary, but when handing over your life or your assets to someone else, you must keep your eyes wide open." I took the file and flipped through the pages. Julian's familiar signature was stamped at the bottom of advance requests, entertainment budgets that wildly exceeded limits, and vague vendor invoices. I suddenly remembered all the times he told me he was too busy with projects, too busy meeting clients, too busy to go wedding dress shopping with me. Back then, I just felt bad that he was working so hard. Looking at it now, I had no idea how much of what he said was actually the truth. I put the file down. "Mom, let the company handle it by the book. I will not interfere." My mother nodded. That is the answer I wanted to hear. That afternoon, my mother took me through the various departments. Some people looked at me with curious eyes, some with respect, and some hid their scrutiny behind polite smiles. I knew I could not avoid the gossip. Calling off a wedding right before the date, revealing myself as the CEO's daughter, and being tied to an executive who had just been fired, it was more than enough fuel for the office rumor mill. But this time, I did not duck my head. I looked straight ahead, offered polite smiles, and introduced myself using my own name. "I am Elena. Starting today, I will be joining the strategy department under the guidance of the CEO and the executive board. I look forward to working with you all." No one knew how cold my hands were. No one knew that a wound was still throbbing in my chest. But I knew that as long as I stood firm today, tomorrow would be a little bit easier. By late afternoon, as I was getting ready to leave my temporary office, my personal phone buzzed. It was Maya, my best friend from college. The moment I picked up, her voice came through rapidly. Elena, where are you? I heard a rumor you called off the wedding. Is it true? What did Julian do to you? I looked out the glass window, watching the sunset fall behind the skyscrapers. The question touched the softest part of my heart, but this time I did not break. Yes, I called it off. The other end was dead silent for a few seconds before Maya lowered her voice. Are you okay? I smiled a sad smile. Not yet, but I am learning how to be. Maya sighed. I am coming over tonight. You do not have to. Shut up. I am not asking. I am bringing non-alcoholic beers, hot soup, and a giant box of tissues. All you have to do is open the door. I laughed out loud. For the first time today, my laughter did not feel entirely forced. After hanging up, I sat down at my new desk. There was a nameplate still wrapped in plastic. Elena Vance. I traced the letters with my finger. I always wanted to be loved like a normal person. But starting today, I wanted to live as exactly who I was. I did not need to hide. I did not need to shrink myself to fit into someone else's greedy hands. And I knew my real battle was not just walking away from Julian. It was learning to never lose myself again. That night, Maya literally rolled a small suitcase into my apartment as if she planned to stay and guard me for a week. She slammed a bag of chicken soup, 2 mocktails, a box of tissues, and a pink pepper spray keychain onto my table, which made me laugh out loud. What is that for? If that jerk Julian dares to show his face around here, I am going to spray him until he sees God. What kind of man is sweet as pie when things are good, but turns into a debt collector the second he does not get a payout? I laughed, but my eyes quickly stung. Maya did not press me. She opened the soup, put a spoon in my hand, and said, Eat. You need energy to cry. I looked down and took a bite of the hot soup. The warm ginger flavor made my throat tighten. That night, I told Maya everything from the real estate closing room, Julian kneeling, the threats at my door, to Chloe's $75,000 debt. Maya's face turned bright red with rage. I am telling you, thank God you stopped when you did. That family did not want a daughter-in-law. They wanted a walking ATM that knew how to shut up and take the abuse. I put my spoon down, my heart heavy. I just do not understand how I could be so blind for so long. Maya grabbed my hand. You were not blind. You just loved with the absolute best parts of yourself. The one who should be ashamed is the person who exploited that goodness. Before I could answer, Maya's phone started buzzing nonstop. She checked it, and her expression instantly changed. Elena, look at this. I took the phone. On the screen was a post in an anonymous internal company forum for Apex Holdings employees. It did not use my name directly, but anyone reading it would know it was about me. The post implied that the CEO's daughter hid her identity to test her fiancé, and after canceling the wedding, used her power to get her fiancé fired. Some comments even said, rich kids do whatever they want. Poor guys who fall for them suffer the most. My hands went cold. I knew people would gossip, but I did not expect it to happen this fast. Maya snatched the phone back, shaking with anger. I bet Julian's family posted this. They are trying to make you look like the villain to get sympathy. I looked at the comments. My heart ached, but I did not panic. Yesterday, I might have been scared. Today, I was not. I called Miss Harper. Within minutes, she sent me a screenshot of the original source. The burner account was registered using a secondary phone number belonging to Chloe. Maya gritted her teeth. I knew it. That little brat. Since she cannot cry her way out, she is resorting to biting. I looked at Chloe's name on the screen and felt a bizarre sense of peace. Some people, if you do not cut them off completely, will use any means necessary to drag you back into their mud. The next morning, I arrived at the office earlier than usual. Walking through the lobby, I distinctly felt the sneaky glances directed at me. Some people quickly looked away. Some pretended to check their phones. Some whispered behind my back. I did not avoid them. I walked straight to the legal department. Miss Harper placed a pre-drafted internal memo in front of me. Miss Elena, the CEO, said, "It is your decision whether or not to publish this." I read the memo. It made no mention of my personal relationship. It simply stated that the company had terminated Julian's contract due to severe violations of financial project protocols. It also firmly stated that any behavior involving spreading false information, defaming a colleague's character, or leaking internal data would be heavily disciplined. Crisp, professional, without playing the victim, I signed my name to authorize the release. As the memo went out to the entire company network, the whispering stopped almost immediately, cut off at the source. But the real blow had not landed yet. Around 3 in the afternoon, the receptionist called to say someone was looking for me. I went down to the visitor room. As soon as I opened the door, I saw Julian standing there, looking exhausted and hollow, holding his phone. Elena, did you really have to push it this far? Now the whole company knows I was fired for fraud. Do you want to ruin my life completely? I looked at him, my heart perfectly steady. You still have a life. It is just that your path no longer runs through my money and my reputation. He stepped forward, his eyes bloodshot. I did not write that post. I know it was Chloe. He froze. I placed a copy of the evidence on the table. But if you continue to defend your sister by shifting the blame onto me, then starting today, I will not just go after the account that posted it. I will go after the people pulling the strings behind it. Right at that moment, the door burst open. Margaret barged in, followed by a ghost-pale Chloe. Before anyone could speak, Margaret raised her hand, aiming a slap at my face. You ruined my family. Is that not enough for you? But before her hand could touch my face, it was caught mid-air by Maya, who had appeared out of nowhere. Maya shoved Margaret's hand away, her voice ice-cold. Try touching my friend, and we will not just be talking about a cancelled wedding. We will be calling the police. I stood tall, looking at the three of them. For the first time, they did not cause me pain. They only proved to me that walking away was the best decision of my life. Margaret's hand was slapped away by Maya, her face contorted with anger and humiliation. The tension in the visitor room was like a wire about to snap. Julian stood between his mother and me, his eyes bloodshot, but lacking the aggressive energy he had when he first walked in. Perhaps even he did not expect his mother to try and strike me right inside my company, in front of my best friend, in full view of the security cameras, and with guards standing just outside the door. Margaret pointed her finger at me, her voice ragged. Do you think just because your mother is the CEO, you can trample on whoever you want? Just because my family is poor, we deserve to be pushed to a dead end by you? I stared at her for a long time. No one trampled on you. You dragged your own family here. Chloe burst into tears. You talk so tough. It is easy for you because you have money, because your mom is the CEO. You can say whatever you want. What about me? I just made one mistake. Why would you not help me? I turned to her, my voice turning to frost. You made one mistake? So who wrote that smear post on the company forum? Whose phone number was used to register the burner account? Who sent those texts threatening to kneel at my front door? Chloe, you did not just make one mistake. You make mistakes constantly. And every time, you expect someone else to pay the bill. Chloe's face went white. She looked at Julian for help, but this time, Julian did not instantly jump to her defense. He stared at the evidence file on the table, his lips pressed tightly together. A strange look washed over his eyes, panic, disappointment, and an utter, bone-deep exhaustion. Chloe, did you really post that? He asked. Chloe stammered. I was just so angry. I saw Elena cost you your job, so I wanted everyone to know she was not as perfect as they thought. Julian closed his eyes, his shoulders shaking slightly. Do you realize that because of that post, we could be sued? Chloe began to wail. I was scared. Who is going to look out for me? You are my brother. You have always taken care of me since we were little. Why are you siding with an outsider now? That word outsider made my chest ache, but it no longer broke me. I was supposed to be Julian's wife. I tried so hard to treat his mother like my own, his sister like my own. Yet in their eyes, I was forever an outsider. An outsider with a checkbook, useful when needed, and kicked to the curb when I stopped obeying. Julian turned to me. For the first time, his gaze was not begging, nor blaming. It was drowning in absolute shame. Elena, I am sorry. I stayed quiet. He continued, his voice hoarse. I know this apology is too late, but only now do I really see it. Every time I said I was doing things for my family, the truth is, I was just making you take the hit for me. I thought I was being a good son, but I was just a coward who could not face the mistakes of my mother and sister. Margaret screamed. Julian, what are you saying? You are blaming your mother because of this girl? Julian looked back at her, a deep fracture visible in his eyes. Mom, if you had not demanded the condo be put in Chloe's name yesterday, if you had not insulted Elena, if I had not been such a coward to kneel and force her, none of this would have happened. Margaret stood stunned, as if she could not believe what she was hearing. She took a step back, tears welling up. But this time, I saw more than just fear in those tears. I saw the deep wound of a mother who was used to her son's absolute obedience, finally having her mistakes laid bare by him. Chloe shrieked. So what? You are going to abandon me and Mom to win her back? Julian looked at his sister, sounding incredibly tired. I am not abandoning anyone. But starting today, you are going to help pay off your own debt. I cannot keep using other people's lives to cover up your mistakes. The room fell dead silent. I looked at Julian. I had no hope left. But I also felt the intense, burning hatred begin to fade. Some lessons require massive loss before a person finally wakes up. It was just a pity that by the time he woke up, my love for him was already dead. The door opened. Miss Harper walked in alongside two corporate lawyers. Miss Elena, the formal demand for the post removal and the public apology has been drafted. I looked at Chloe. You have two choices. 1. Take down the post, issue a public apology on the internal forum, and sign an agreement never to do it again. 2. Let my legal team handle it by the book. Chloe trembled, looking at Margaret. Margaret no longer dared to scream. Julian picked up the document and placed it in front of his sister. Sign it. Chloe cried hysterically. But finally, she picked up the pen and signed. Her handwriting was crooked and shaking, mirroring the reality of her finally having to take responsibility for her own actions. I stood watching. I did not feel happy. I did not feel vindicated. I only felt empty. As they were getting ready to leave, Julian stopped at the door and turned back to look at me. Elena, I will not bother you again, but if I may, I just want to say one last thing. Thank you for truly loving me once. And I am sorry I did not deserve it. I looked at him, my voice very soft. You do not need to thank me. Just promise that in the future, you will not turn anyone else's kindness into their burden. He bowed his head and quietly led his mother out. Chloe walked out last, clutching her copy of the agreement. The door clicked shut. This time, there were no curses, no begging, just a heavy, definitive silence. Maya grabbed my hand and whispered, "You won." I stared at the closed door and shook my head slightly. No, I just finally escaped. After Julian's family left the building, I thought things would immediately settle down, but life never closes a wound with just a signed piece of paper. That evening, I returned to my apartment completely drained. Maya insisted on coming with me. The second we walked in, she checked the locks, inspected the doorbell camera, forced me to change my elevator passcode, reset my door code, and block every unknown number on my phone. I watched her hustle around, finding it both funny and incredibly heartwarming. There are people who do not constantly say I love you, but every action feels like throwing a warm blanket over a freezing heart. Do not overthink it, Maya said. They signed the agreement. I doubt they have the guts to start trouble again. I sat on the sofa, holding a mug of hot water, and answered softly, I am not afraid of them starting trouble. I am afraid that once everything gets quiet, I will start remembering the good times. Maya fell silent. She sat down next to me, her voice gentle. Missing him is normal. You cannot erase 3 years in 3 days. But missing him does not mean you have to go back. I nodded. That sentence acted like a rope, pulling me out of the weak abyss in my mind. That night, while Maya slept on the living room sofa, I lay in my bedroom, scrolling through my photo albums. Pictures of Julian and me standing in the rain in Seattle. Pictures of him holding a birthday bouquet. Pictures of us trying on wedding outfits. There was one photo where he was looking at me with such a gentle smile. His eyes looked so genuine then, it made my heart physically hurt. I did not know if the man in that photo had ever truly loved me, or if he was just a perfect version of him I had invented in my head. But I knew exactly who the man standing outside my door threatening me yesterday was. He was the one I needed to remember the most, so I would never make the mistake of softening my heart again. The next morning, I arrived at work early. My mother assigned me to sit in on a review meeting for the Riverfront project, the exact project listed in Julian's fraud file. Sitting in the middle of the boardroom, listening to every number, every expense, and every risk being meticulously dissected, I finally understood that the business world has no room for blind sentiment. One wrong signature could implicate dozens of people. One moment of leniency could force an entire system to pay the price. Marriage was exactly the same. Turning a blind eye to red flags could leave you trapped for a lifetime. At the end of the meeting, my mother asked me, if you were the executive in charge of handling this project, what would you do? I looked at the report in front of me. My heart gave a tiny flutter when I saw Julian's name in the appendix. but my voice remained firm. I would isolate all tasks involving the irregular activity for an independent audit, replace the project manager, review all subcontractors, and maintain the timeline for the clients, without covering up any internal liabilities. If there are financial damages, whoever authorized them faces the legal consequences. My mother looked at me for a long time, then gave a slight smile. You are starting to understand. I knew she was not just talking about work. She was talking about my life. Hurt is hurt, but you cannot let pain make you compromise your principles. Love is love, but you cannot let love make you cover up someone else's sins. That afternoon, as I was packing up to leave, Miss Harper handed me an envelope. Miss Elena, legal received Chloe's public apology. The post has been taken down. Also, Mr. Julian returned a list of the high-value gifts you purchased for his family. He stated he will pay you back in installments. I opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. Julian's handwriting was exactly as I remembered it, slightly slanted and neat, but this time, every word felt incredibly heavy. He wrote that he had moved his mother and sister to a cheap rental in the suburbs and was currently looking for odd jobs. Chloe was working retail at a clothing store. His mother had taken a job as a prep cook. He was working multiple gigs to pay off the debts. He promised to pay whatever was legally owed, and he had contacted the police regarding the loan sharks. At the end of the letter, he wrote just one sentence. I am not asking for your forgiveness anymore, because I finally understand that some damage cannot be erased by an apology. I folded the letter. My heart still ached, but it no longer violently twisted. Perhaps when a person stops blaming others, that is when they truly start paying the price. But whatever growth he achieved no longer had anything to do with me. That night, I drove myself home. On the way, I passed the small flower shop where Julian had bought the roses to propose to me. The lights inside were still bright, the bouquets still vibrant behind the glass. I pulled over to the curb and stared at it for a long time before flicking my turn signal and driving away. It was not because I was no longer hurting, but because I understood there are some places you should only ever drive past, never step inside again. When I got home, I opened the balcony door. The night breeze carried the faint scent of rain. I pulled out the unsent wedding invitations from my drawer. I looked at my name and Julian's name printed side by side in embossed gold foil. After a while, I tore the invitation in half. Not aggressively, not out of anger, just very slowly. Each piece of paper falling into the trash can felt like a piece of the past being put exactly where it belonged. I did not know who I would meet tomorrow, who I would love, or who I would trust. But I knew that from now on, before giving my heart to anyone, I would always leave an exit for myself. 3 months after the canceled wedding, I ran into Julian again on a drizzly morning. I had just walked out of a meeting with a client in downtown Chicago, holding a thick folder. He was standing on the other side of the street, wearing a faded jacket, his shoulders dotted with rain. Next to him was a delivery bike, propped against the curb. When our eyes met, I did not feel the sharp stab of pain in my chest like I used to. It just gave a soft tug, like noticing an old scar on a rainy day. Julian walked slowly toward me. Elena, I am not here to bother you. I looked at him, waiting in silence for him to continue. My mom and Chloe moved out to Peoria to live with an aunt. Chloe is working at a retail store. My mom took a job as a dishwasher. I am doing whatever delivery jobs I can to pay off the debts. Whatever is legal, I am paying. Whatever was predatory, I got the law involved. I just wanted to say one thing to you. I am truly sorry. The wind blew past, carrying the smell of damp asphalt and exhaust. The man standing in front of me no longer had the polished aura of a project director confidently talking about his future. He was much thinner, his eyes sunken, but within his gaze was a long overdue clarity. I asked, "Are you doing okay?" He gave a sad smile. "Not really, but for the first time in my life, I know what it means to take responsibility." I nodded. That answer did not soften my heart into taking him back, but it made my spirit feel lighter. Perhaps what I had wanted was not to see him destroyed, but to see him understand exactly where he went wrong, then live a decent life. Do not ever make anyone else pay the price for you again. He bowed his head. I know. I also know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness. I just hope you have a wonderful life. I looked at him one last time and gave a very faint smile. I will. With that, I turned and walked away. This time, I did not walk away choking back tears like I did leaving the closing room. I walked away completely at peace. The rain fell softly on my shoulders, but my heart was no longer cold. I knew that some people appear in your life not to walk with you to the end, but to teach you where your boundaries are, what self-respect looks like, and what kind of love is never worth the trade. 1 year later, I was officially promoted to Director of Strategy at Apex Holdings. On the day I received my promotion, my mother sat in the front row. Her eyes were red, but she was smiling proudly. Maya sat next to her, holding up her phone recording the whole thing, whispering, "My best friend is finally back where she belongs." I stood on the stage under the bright lights, looking down at the many faces watching me. I was no longer the girl hiding inside a fragile love. Nor was I the woman who feared gossip more than heartbreak. I was Elena Vance, someone who had loved the wrong person, felt true pain, and collapsed under the weight of her own trust, but ultimately stood back up. That evening, I returned to my small apartment in Lincoln Park. I had planted new flowers on the balcony. There were no more wedding bouquets, no more invitations, no more floor plans of a condo that once made me dream of a home with Julian. But there were warm yellow lights, a small dining table, soft music playing, a missed call from my mom asking if I had eaten, and a text from Maya planning a beach trip for the weekend. I suddenly realized that happiness does not have to be a massive wedding or a luxury condo with someone's name on it. Sometimes, happiness is simply surviving a brutal storm and still having enough peace to brew a cup of tea, open the window, and smile at yourself. I used to think losing Julian meant losing my future, but it turns out losing him was just losing a wrong turn. When a door slams shut, it does not mean your life is over. It is just the universe reminding you to stop trying to force your way into a house that was never meant for you. This family and marriage story is the awakening journey of a woman right before her wedding. When she discovers her future in-laws want to use her mother's money to buy a house but force it under her sister-in-law's name, everything changes. Moving from love, trust, and sacrifice to a painful but necessary cancellation of the wedding, the story delivers profound lessons about self-respect, boundaries in love, the need for clarity before marriage, and a woman's value when she knows how to protect herself. This is a story about family, marriage, mother-in-law and daughter-in-law dynamics, betrayal of trust, and the female lead turning the tables. It is perfect for listening, reflecting, and drawing lessons for life. This is a fictional story I created based on emotional slices of life. I use an AI voice to deliver the story to the audience, hoping it provides valuable life lessons. The characters in this story do not represent any specific individuals. In my personal opinion, this story reminds us of a few beautiful truths to live a happier and more joyful life. 1. Once you love someone, love them genuinely, but never lose your own boundaries. 2. Marriage requires not just emotion, but respect, fairness, and the ability to protect each other in the face of adversity. 3. Kindness is precious, but if placed in the wrong hands, it can become a burden to yourself. 4. A woman should never fear canceling the wrong wedding, because stepping into a marriage that will hurt you for a lifetime is far more terrifying. 5. Family is a place for love, not a place to use the word family to force someone into unconditional sacrifice. 6. After being hurt, the most important thing is not revenge, but standing back up, living decently, living strongly, and finding peace for yourself.